Good morning. It is 10:30, so we'll get started out of respect for everybody's time. I'm Jill Schluty. I'm the police chief here in Columbia, and this has been a very top of the pile topic for a while as far as crime stats. So I've been getting a lot of inquiries about that, and we've been working hard to put together what we feel like are accurate numbers for 2024. You guys got a short video yesterday. We kind of wanted to preview what we're going to talk about, some of the issues that we're dealing with, and then have you guys come and be able to ask questions and get more information. So the packets in back, there's two separate packets for use of force statistics. So we went back and did an audit of 2023 and 2024 based on some issues that we had with the system. And I'm going to go through real quick. So everybody up here, there's probably people up here you may or may not know. So Lisa Rowland's on the end. She's essentially in charge of all of our professional staff. So our non-sworn staff almost entirely reports to her. Assistant Chief Mark Fitzgerald is over the Patrol Bureau. Assistant Chief Jeremiah Hunter is over our Patrol Support Bureau, which is essentially uniform services like the SROs, our park rangers, the airport, traffic, special events, all those kinds of things. Deputy Chief Matt Stevens is second in command. Assistant Chief Paul Dickinson is over professional standards, so he has internal affairs, training, recruiting, policy, things of that nature. Assistant Chief Lance Bollinger is over our investigations. Sarah Jones is going to be really popular at this meeting, I have a feeling. She is our records management administrator, records management system administrator, and we stole her from Chicago, so we're very happy she's here. And then Sergeant Eric Wigman is over the internal affairs unit. So you've got 4 handouts. 2 of those are the revised use of force stats. And then you've got another one that's got the really important stuff on there about the crime stats. And then you've got kind of a FAQ sheet that we wanted to put together because some of this is a little bit technical and we understand that. And so we want people to be able to absorb that information. We know you're trying to report it back out in an accurate way, so we wanted to provide information that we could. So I have all these folks up here because we all have different subject matters that we're experts in. I'm certainly not the subject matter expert in everything. So I'm just going to start off by taking questions. Big high-level overview of the stats. So we went back and looked at these numbers. When Sarah came here, we were very fortunate, she came from a department that was using the records management system that we have. She was in that system for almost 20 years. So when she came here, she started looking into the way we were using the system and said, hey, there's some inefficiencies in here. There's some things that you guys could be doing to use the system better. And then also went through some of how we were coding our records and categorizing them. And so she went back through 2024 and spent many hours going back through tons of reports and making sure they were coded correctly. So that's why this took a little bit longer than normal, but we really wanted to make sure we got these numbers as close to perfect as possible. And we'll talk a little bit, and I'm sure questions will come up of why the numbers will never be exactly perfect because crime stats are kind of a living, breathing thing. So overall, you'll see there's different categories, and so they're highlighted in blue on your sheet. So we have crimes against persons, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in depth, so I'm going to skip over it for right now. We have crimes against property, and then we have crimes against society. So crimes against property was down for the city from 23 to 24, approximately 7.27%. Crimes against society was down approximately 2.25% for that period. And then crimes against persons, we think, was up about 0.64%, so less than 1%. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth, and there's some information on that FAQ sheet about why that number is the one that we're probably the least sure about. So when Sarah started digging into these stats, one of the things that we found was when you look at NIBRS versus UCR, it's much more detailed reporting. And so the categories that you see on that sheet are categories that some did not exist under UCR. Training 150 some officers to understand the NIBRS system, I would say, is probably pretty close to impossible. It's just a very technical function, and so relying on them to pick the right coding, because if you talk to Sarah and you'll hear when she answers some questions, there's a lot of detail in this and a lot of nuance. And so one of the things she discovered was we'd had some over-reporting in our sex crimes categories. And you can ask her some more questions about that in depth. A great example is we did not have 75 fondlings in 2023. Those just were things that got miscoded. She knew that because when she went in to fix 2024, she saw what the problem was. So what we did was we said, okay, let's take the sex crimes categories out and try to make a straight comparison without those, since we know that's driving this potential this potential unreliability in the person's number. So if you subtract out rape, sodomy, sexual assault with an object, fondling, incest, and statutory rape, and then you look at those numbers side by side, that's how I got to the 0.64% increase. Flat would be probably how Sarah described it, because that's obviously a difference. I think I did the math. It was like 15 offenses difference. That's my big picture items. There's a lot of information here, so we're going to start taking questions, and if I can't answer it, I'm going to have one of these really smart folks come up and help me. Yes?
Chief Schluty, the number that sticks out to me is the murder number. It looked like it almost doubled from 2023 to 2024, from 7 to 13. I know Mr. Seawood talked a couple years ago. We had a large number of domestic violence murders. What do you read into those numbers, and domestic violence, or something else that sticks out to you? Thanks.
I'm going to have Assistant Chief Bollinger come up and talk a little bit more about kind of the big picture overview of what categories those would fall into. I think if you look back historically, 13 is not a high number for the city. I know because I was in investigations, a couple different rotations, and we hit that number a couple different times. Obviously, we want it to be 0. That would be a great goal. But I'll have Lance talk a little bit about, as opposed to the year where I think all but 1 or 2 of the homicides were domestic, this year was not that way.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. So when we look at our homicide numbers, that's a hard number to track. I'll just kind of go through these for our last year. Like I said, we had 13 homicides, so we had 13 different victims. One of those was a double homicide, so it was actually one incident. When I look at the first one that we had reported was in January of this year. It occurred on Deerfoot Parkway. It was a domestic-related homicide between a father and a son. You look through the next homicides that happened. We had one that occurred over on the Walmart parking lot on Connolly Road. That is not a domestic-related homicide. We had another one that occurred on West Boulevard that was not a domestic-related homicide. Both firearm-related homicides that generated from disputes that occurred. The next one occurred on Doris Drive. It ended up being a home invasion robbery where the suspect was actually killed during the middle of the home invasion robbery. We went on to the next couple that occurred were not domestic related either. One occurred with a knife in Douglas Park. Another occurred up on Premier Lane. It ended up being a non-domestic related homicide, another dispute that resulted in gun violence. Looking through here, we had another one that occurred, non-domestic related, occurred over at the White Castle on Clark Lane. Then we had the double homicide that occurred on Ridgemont, which was a domestic related homicide, so up to 3 domestic related. Going through the next one, we had one that occurred on Rice Road. It was a firearm related crime, not domestic related. It was disturbance related. Another one occurred on Boyd Lane, non-domestic related, and the last 2 were non-domestic related gun crimes. So in total last year we had 13 homicides. 3 of them were domestic related. A lot of the others stemmed from various different incidents, from robberies to verbal disturbances to different types of disputes that resulted in gunplay.
All right, yes, sir. Sorry, I was supposed to say, and I did not follow directions. They're going to bring you the mic when you ask a question because this is being recorded so that way everybody can hear the question. Can you do that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, could you go more in depth into the discrepancy and over-reporting of the sex crimes? And was it only 2023 that those were over-reported and that led to the data discrepancy?
So we did not go back. All the numbers have already been reported to the state and to the federal authorities for years prior. So we did not go back and try to redo all those numbers because it's really kind of an exercise in futility at this point. But I'm going to have Sarah come up and talk a little bit about, and get ready to be overwhelmed, but she's going to talk a little bit about what that coding looks like and why it was problematic.
Hello. So reviewing the cases from 2024, I discovered that they were coded based on what was being initially told to the officers at the time, but they weren't quite meeting the definition that the federal government says is the definition of the crime. So an instance would be a person saying, I was raped, but not going into details of what occurred, and that just doesn't get to the NIBR's definition of rape. So the reports are taken and they're accounted for, but not in the numbers reporting them as rape. I only reviewed the 2024 numbers as part of the audit. The previous years have already gone out to the federal numbers, so changing them wouldn't change what the feds have already reported out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, so just to add a little bit of clarification, so the way that our department years ago started reporting on sexual assaults, we very much are a victim-centered agency when we started doing this. And we were part of a program that's called YHOP. It's You Have Options. And it's really based on what the victim wants to report. So when the victim comes and initially gives us that report that a sexual assault occurs, they're going to open up that investigation and they're going to come and say, I was raped. And they're going to give us that initial report. Well, then they may not come back and report any of the specifics that meets the elements of a crime. What I mean by that is they're not going to go into the details of this actually meets the statute that a crime occurred. And so they were, when that was initially getting reported, they were going off the fact that they used the word rape was classified as a forcible rape when the actual acts that support the crime did not occur. So it didn't meet the legal definition of a rape, even though that's what the victim was reporting. It's similar to, we see it a lot with other crimes, like people say, I was robbed. And we'll show up, well, robbery requires force, right? I forcibly take something from you. Well, somebody will come break into their car and take the change out of the middle of the car, and they'll say, I was robbed. So if we reported that as a robbery every time, our stats would be way skewed. It was kind of the same thing that we were seeing with sexual assaults, and that's one of the reasons why it's really important that we make sure that the elements of the crime are met to meet that legal definition. So,
That's great. I'm really glad Lance brought that up because when we started that program, we very mindfully shifted to a victim-based program, and we had all of our investigators trained in trauma-informed interviewing. And so we encourage people to report, but when they report sometimes we just get an initial phone call, and if we don't get enough detail, we can't put it in that box if it doesn't meet the federal definition. So we'll count it someplace else. It doesn't not exist, but it just can't go in that box if we don't have enough information to meet the definition.
Chief Schluty, Mark Slavitt with KRCG News. I have a couple questions for you. The first one is, how accurate are these numbers?
So I feel very confident in the property and society numbers for the reasons we're talking about. The person's number, I think, could be a little bit here or there, but when you look at the number before you take the sex crimes out, you're down 3.52%. So we're talking a difference in 20, 25 offenses. So I feel pretty confident that even that the number that we came up with after we took the sexual assault, not just sexual assault, but the sex crimes out, I feel like that updated number, that's one of the reasons we did that. Actually said, how can we compare it side by side? Well, you have to take them out of both and then compare. So I think anywhere between probably 2% and the number we're at, that's I mean, that's a flat number essentially, right? You're talking about 15 to 20 offenses. So whether it's up or down that much, I think is pretty negligible.
And when you first took office, you said you wanted the department to be more transparent. How will this help with transparency within the police department?
So the next phase of this project is going to include a dashboard. So I mentioned that in the video. So what Sarah is working on and has successfully put together at her prior department is a dashboard that will essentially almost be real time. So the numbers get updated through records on a 24-hour cycle. And so you'll be able to go there, the public can go there at any time and see what the crime numbers are. And that's going to be really hard for people at first because they're used to this end of the year number and like, okay, here's what it is. When really it's this living, breathing thing that can change daily because we arrest people, the numbers get categorized into different places. And so you're going to have to really watch that dashboard. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to do that this way, because there's also all these technical things about when a crime gets solved versus when it happened. And so crime stats are not, one of the reasons we put together the FAQ sheet is this is not a simple topic. It's not a straight, it's up, it's down, and everybody walks away. A big variable in this too that you can't predict is we're talking about what's reported to us. So we have no idea what's not reported to us, right? So when we say something's down or something's up, I'm very hesitant because compared to what? And I'm not saying crime stats don't have a place and that we shouldn't discuss them, but it's like other things. I mean, was the flu up or down? Well, how many people went to the doctor and did they confirm they had the flu? How many assaults did we have? We talk about shoplifting. Assistant Chief Fitzgerald's been doing a great job working on with our retailers about shoplifting reports because during COVID, we think reporting went down. We were having less contact with people. We know that a lot of our retailers, there's some retailers in town that have a policy that they just don't report shoplifting. And so that doesn't mean shoplifting's less frequent. It just means it's not being reported to the police. So I don't like taking victory laps in those instances because there is an element of how much got reported to us.
Hi, Chief Schluty. This is Erica McGuire with ABC 17 News. Looking over the report, I see really the highest number on here is the number of assaults. It's pretty similar to 2023. What measures is CPD taking to bring this number down, and what challenges are you guys currently facing?
I'm going to tell you, I don't think bringing down assaults is something that's really within the purview of the police department. Those are really things that happen. I mean, I worked downtown in the bar district when I was on the street. The ability of us to just keep people from fighting inside a bar when they get out of a bar, obviously, well, I can tell you I was standing right there many times and they fought anyway. So there's alcohol involved in those cases, of course, but obviously education, domestic assault is folded into these numbers, so that's an important thing to remember. That could be someplace where we can move the needle a little bit more because we have a little bit more tools in our toolkit for that. But you're straight, you know, two college guys getting in a fight when they walk outside of the bar, that's a tough one, right? So I try to be very realistic about my job. Obviously, we want crime to go down, but there's some places where we're just probably not in a great position to say, hey, we're going to drive down assault. And if you look back historically, assault has always driven that category. So when you look at crimes against persons, that's always the highest number. And assault is a very wide thing. It can be everything from a very serious assault where someone's seriously injured, clear down to, if you look at the definition of fourth-degree assault, it's really like, were you in fear of being assaulted or harmed? So it's a wide definition.
System for accounting crimes, and it's something that a lot of departments and a lot of big departments that I read have struggled with, including in New York and LA. They weren't able to make that transition in time. So I wonder if you can just kind of shed some light on when CPD started making that transition to the new reporting system. You kind of talked about it before. What are some of the challenges of getting officers to really learn that new system and fill out the proper codes? And well, I'll let you.
Sure. So we transitioned in 2019. The transition, I think, probably could have been smoother, and a lot of that has to do with training, right? So this is a brand new approach. It's completely different than the way we've done it. If you look at the really old and boring video the FBI has about this, which it only takes 7 minutes of your life, but it is pretty informative. This UCR reporting was in place since 1930. So it was really time for them to come up with something that was more detailed, and I think a lot of departments were asking for that. So we transitioned, but the biggest takeaway, because I of course am asking Sarah, like, what's driving this? What can we do to fix it? And so one of the issues that we found was, I mentioned before, we have 194, 5 sworn positions. I can promise you, I don't know how to do NIBRS coding. To train officers on the street who have 1,000 different things going on, how to do this technical work on the back end, I think it's kind of an exercise in futility, really, and it's not something that's super important for them to know. So we made the decision that, because previously they were putting in a code, Records was just accepting it, and that's how we kind of got off the rails. Going forward, the Records unit is the subject matter expert. So you've got, 5 to 8 people in that unit that's their bread and butter is police records, what's in them, what should be in them. Part of that is our sunshine folks. So these are the people that should be deep down in the weeds with this and looking at this and going, okay, well, they put it in as a sexual assault, but it really needs to go into this category, because the other issue is our professional staff tend to be more stable, like that they stay a long time. And so having people in those jobs that is what they do all day long is really helpful for, obviously, consistency and longevity.
This is more of a clarifying question here, but for those 2023 and 2024 numbers, are those both totally in compliance with the new NIBRS system? Or
Boy,
they're both NIBRS numbers?
Are you trying to get me audited? Is this what? No, I'm just kidding. As far as the reporting, we met the reporting requirements. We just don't feel very confident that the 2023 numbers are accurate based on what Sarah found in the audit.
So the 2024 numbers, you'd say that's the first year where you guys fully, I guess, made the transition to the new NIBRS system?
That's what I would say. And it wasn't anything anyone purposefully did. I think it was just we didn't know what we didn't know. And so having somebody like Sarah come in with 20 years experience in this, super helpful. Because the back end part of this is, having worked in our particular RMS system, she was able to find places where we just had errors and inefficiencies in the way we built the actual system.
And I know this is something you mentioned in the Facebook video last night. So it's safe to say that moving on from starting with the 2024 numbers, those are comparable to years before. Is that right?
I would be very cautious about drawing those conclusions because of what I'm describing, yes.
One last question that I have is, just to make sure that this is something
Sure.
that kind of we don't overblow, is, I guess, how would you describe how significant are the changes in the way the department is categorizing crime now?
I think we're trying to follow the NIBRS rules as closely as possible. That's what Sarah's here for. She's already done training with a lot of folks in our records unit. And so going forward, that's the goal, is to be as accurate as possible. But we have to provide our people the tools and the training to do that. And I just think the transition was probably rough. You had COVID layered in there too. So there's a lot of things going on. So it's just important that when we see something like this, that we do something to make it better and fix it. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I want to say a little bit about the dashboard. I think we all in our staff meetings, we discuss and acknowledge, in this vacuum of not having the data right there and accessible, we're seeing people grasping at trying to come up with numbers. And so you see things like Facebook pages that a scanner app, or people are doing their weekly crime recaps, and they are completely inaccurate. And I don't fault them, but they're pulling that information from what they hear on the scanner, which joint communications, the way something is dispatched, has very little to do most times with how it's actually coded in a report. But yet I see these lists of, we had 26 disturbances. Well, as you will notice, there's no category on here for disturbance. So what was really the outcome of that? Disturbance really could have ended in an assault, or you and I were just arguing out in front of City Hall and somebody thought we were going to assault each other. There's just a lot of inaccuracies in that, but we understand why people want that information, so they're trying to find some way to get it, and we weren't providing them a great, reliable way, and that's the goal now.
Yeah, sorry, one other clarifying question that I thought of is, I know you have the difference on here between it looks like the 2024 and the 2023 numbers. I know you said before that it seems like 2024, that's the first year where you guys are fully confident that the numbers match up as closely to the NIBRS system as possible. I guess, is it really possible to compare the 2024 and 2023 numbers then?
I think because when you get down into this, Sarah may have to come up and correct me or rescue me here, but property is a lot easier to figure out in the coding. The person's ones, it's a lot more of a change. And so when she did the 24 numbers, because she came in and literally went back through all those reports on 24 and said, hey, this got put in aggravated assault, it was a regular assault, or vice versa. Same way with the sex crimes, but the glaring problems were with that sex crimes category. So that's why I say just be very cautious if you go out and say crimes up, 0.64%. That's what we think. That's like the best number I can come up with, the closest one. But even if we didn't have that number down 3.5%, it's not bad. But when you look at percentages are tricky, right? Stats are tricky because I could throw something out and say theft from coin-operated machines is down 300%. Well, how many thefts from coin-operated machines did we have last year, right? So you can seem like you have this big overblown number when really the number of actual incidents is very low. So just be very careful in the way that you report that. We're trying to be, we know this is a sensitive topic, we're trying to be very transparent and upfront with how we're doing it because there's a lot of conversation surrounding this right now and it's important that people have factual information.
Thank you. One thing that we haven't touched on yet is the show of force update, both for 2023 and the new one for 2024. Could you talk about the impetus for that 2023 update and what was found, and if there were numbers that had to be moved around, why that was?
Yep, I'm going to have Assistant Chief Dickinson come up and talk about why we did this audit.
Good morning. So going back and looking at some of the use of force from a 5-year perspective, the software that we used got updated and some of its reporting, the strengths that they could report. And going back, we used that updated software to do some of the reporting. And some of it, we found the data that we were able to report, some of the use of force, we found errors in the reporting. So, and the data that we pulled through, it wasn't 100% accurate, so we weren't comfortable putting that data back out. So instead of putting all that data through, we went back 1 year to look at that data, and we wanted to set a starting point from the data that we were comfortable putting out. So we took last year's data and the year before to put that out, and that wanted to be our starting point going forward with the data.
Could you talk about the specific nature of the errors in the 2023 and before data?
It was just the basic numbers, really. There weren't huge discrepancies, but it was just, to be honest, a total numbers.
And was it something in the reporting process, or was it something just at the final stage, at the aggregate stage for the numbers? What led to the error?
I would say aggregate number data.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Thank you.
Hi, Tracy Wilson, Glee Camp Race Matters Friends. My question is I have a couple questions, but is your software going to meet your capacity needs for data reporting, or is the department going to have to invest in new systems? We've been told over the years that the department has struggled with their RMS system, and so I'm curious about whether that you have the technology capacity to do more. And then my other question is, this is just a geek question, which is, I love this data, but do you have it so you can see it side by side in a Excel or something like that?
Maybe.
For comparison? And the last one is about sex crime. So I think it was not 2023, maybe it was 2022 that we had 10 domestic violence homicides. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that that's still the case.
Yeah, I don't think that number shifted.
Okay, cool. Okay. But it would go under homicides, but they would just be coded.
Yes.
That they're domestic violence.
So we kind of have to keep track of that on the back end as far as a little bit more detail about what caused that particular crime. So Lance kind of touched on a little bit. Some of them were domestic violence. Some of them, I can think of one was a weird road rage incident. One was fighting over a girl in a parking lot.
So are those records closed in a way, like those domestic violence cases, so that we could not look at them in terms of a qualitative inquiry? So one of the things I was interested in is like, okay, you've got 10 domestic violence cases. They're all different. Is the data open in some kind of way or form so that we could look at it qualitatively? And does it say anything? deeper about sex crimes and domestic violence in our community. We talked to the prosecutor about this. We just haven't gotten a really good answer about what parts of those records, now that they're closed, would be available for research.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation I'm willing to have with Roger Johnson, our prosecuting attorney, because I get what you're asking. You want to kind of do a dive, not necessarily into the people. It's just more about, or the details of the crime that they're going to prosecute in court. It's just more about, are there similarities? Where could we maybe have interrupted this? So that's if you send me kind of a list of the data you're looking for, I think that would help me have that conversation with him and with our Sunshine folks. The first part was the RMS system. So we are still going to actively pursue a new RMS system. The system that we're in, we're not happy with some of the performance. However, I will very much tell you that when Sarah came here and we lamented some of the issues we were having, her comment was basically that there was more issues with how the system was set up than it was the actual system itself. So she spent a lot of time going back in and essentially changing back in things within the system so that we would get more of what we needed. So she's been extremely helpful in that respect.
Mike Murphy, Como Buzz. Could you explain a little bit about what doesn't make it into these statistics? So, for example, I'm looking for trespassing. And then also, Fire Chief Schaefer was in here and talked about, in November, about 67 warming fires. We have 30 arson on here. So what complaints make it, what don't, and why?
Are you asking why the number of arsons doesn't match the number of warming fires?
Yeah, or anything, for example. Yeah, or just anything, for example. I'm using that as an example for what does this include and what does it not include? So obviously not trespassing, or it's classified some other way, or perhaps it's a misdemeanor or something. And then why would he be talking about 67 fires that fire marshals are investigating, but you have 30 complaints?
So just off the top of my head, I would say it would have to meet the NIBR's definition of arson, and I don't know in those cases how many of those did or how many of those didn't and how far they are in the investigation. I can't tell you what trespassing falls under, but I bet Sarah can.
So trespassing is a Group B offense, so those are all Group A offenses. The only reporting of trespassing is if we make a trespassing arrest. So if there's no arrest, there's no reporting of it. So these are considered the Group A offenses that the state collects. The Group B are DUI, trespassing, indecency, disorderly conduct, and they're only collected when there is an arrest.
Go ahead.
And for the arson one, part of it is the police have to be there, but there's also criminal damage. So if it's destruction by fire and it doesn't meet arson, it would be in that number. Arson has to do with the intent to cause damage to property that doesn't belong to you. So it's not always an arson in the police side of it.
It has to be. Now you know why I had her answer those questions.
I think whenever some sort of data methodology or the data itself gets revised, there's sort of a heightened scrutiny to make sure that the data is becoming more accurate. Is there some sort of oversight, either within or externally, of the police to make sure that this data, isn't being manipulated for some reason or another?
I'm not really sure how you would do that. You would have to have access to our systems. You'd have to have access to the reports. I get where you're going. The state can audit us. That's something that they can come in and do. There's time constraints on when we have to have the information in, and I appreciate your question, but the nature of the information is such that you couldn't come in, and I couldn't even allow you just to come in and do an audit because there's a lot of clearances you have to see all the reporting. I think it's important that, and this is a double-edged sword, right? We knew going into this, I'm very realistic. So you come into this and you say, crime's down, and you're going to have people upset about that. Strange, but it will happen. You say crime's up, people are going to be upset, right? so to me, the most important thing is, obviously, I don't want there to be any crime. We know that's not the way the world works. So we want to help drive those numbers down as much as we can, knowing there's certain aspects of this we will never control, will always be reactive to. The most important thing to me is just that we're reporting it accurately. I see my role, a huge part of my role as the police chief, on many things as an advisor. And so this data is not only important to show what's happening in the community, with it in the back of people's minds, they should understand this is only what was reported. So not only what's happening in the community, this also drives resource allocation decisions for us, right? So when we're looking at this, we say, hey, this is an issue. This is going up. What are we going to do about auto theft, right? What are we going to do about if there's crime happening in a certain area that's disproportionate? We have to have good data just to make those types of decisions. And I also do not discount, fear of crime is a real thing, right? So we can't just say, hey, the numbers are great. If you feel uncomfortable, that's because there are things that go unreported. I see things all the time on social media where people say, this happened, and I'll go in and I'll dig, and I can find they did not make a police report. They did not call the police. And so we have to be mindful of both sides of that coin, and then how we influence and impact that. There's a lot of different approaches, but I think as the police, we have to be sensitive to all of the community's concerns and try to be as responsive as we can, regardless of what the numbers say, up or down.
And then for today's announcement particularly, was there a particular reason for the timing of it being now and today? Was there any specific impetus there?
I was tired of getting 1,000 emails about it. No, I'm just kidding. That did play into it. So Sarah had been working, obviously, it's another great thing. It's hard for people to understand. So all these reports are coming in throughout the year, right? Well, it's not as if December 31st, 11:59 p.m. happens and instantly we have those numbers. There's a ton of back-end work that has to go on because there's still reports trickling in. There's still approvals that have to be done. There's still follow-up that has to be done. And so really that whole process, whether we're talking about crime reports or use of force reporting, internal affairs investigations, there's a period of 60 days where everybody's just trying to get everything done from the previous year. So by the time all the reports got done, she could go through them, and then we got all this together. We're at, I don't even know what the date is anymore, March 21st. So I can promise you this has been a front burner issue for me for probably about 6 months. So I'm glad to have this conversation and let people know where we are.
And so it was just as soon as the data was ready sort of thing?
As soon as the data was ready, and then this team had to come together and go, hey, we got to present this, and we need to do it in a way that's understandable to people.
I'm going to switch more into the online dashboard that we'll be launching this summer. Can you go into detail about that? What company are you using, and how much is that going to cost?
That's the company I'm going to use right there. She wrote.
Okay, I figured.
She wrote everything. She's done it before. Total faith. I've seen the product, so and crime data is like the first piece of it. There's other things that we're talking about that we want to put on there as well, so that people have access. I can just tell you from years ago being the public information officer, a lot of the questions I got were things that I kept asking myself, why can't we just let people have access to this information? Because it made my job a lot easier. Then I could just answer the questions about it. So that's where we're trying to get, so that any given time, our media partners, our folks in the community, folks on the council can just come in and look, and then they can go, oh, I saw this. Can you talk to me more about this or why this is? That's where we want to get to.
Yes, can you describe what's going to go into the dashboard? Give a kind of description of what it will keep track of. Like, one of my questions is, will we be able to see, like you, I think I got, is it Bollinger?
Lance, we just call him Lance on Friday.
Lance, okay. Sorry, Lance. Listed off the homicides. And so I was thinking, like, okay, where was this and where was this? So one of my questions has been, are these things all kind of in the same area, or are they all over the place? And I know, you know, people will say, well, there's so much crime happening here. And so I'm just looking for a way, kind of visually, what does it look like? So
I'm glad you reminded me about that. So we have been very deficient in mapping. And so what's the name of the product we currently use? It's the E word. Esri is what the city currently uses. She actually built her prior dashboard on that same system, so that's what we'll use in there, and you'll be able to map all those things. There's no limit.
There was some reporting at KBIA late last year about some of the discrepancies between the data here and with the State Highway Patrol. And I think part of it was, in terms of reasoning, was because of these different systems to categorize things. Would these sort of changes help unify those data sets?
So Sarah's going to come up and piggyback off this too. Go ahead and come on up. But one of the issues that came up was like, I don't know what platform the Highway Patrol uses, and I'm certainly not talking bad about them at all, but when you look at the nuances of things like, are you comparing year to date, or are you comparing a whole year against a year to date? And that's what I saw was happening in some cases, and people were going, oh, look, this number is up or down or whatever they were saying. And then you look at the Highway Patrol's dashboard and you're saying, no, you're getting that number because you don't understand what you're looking at. And so I really encourage people, this is not an easy topic to understand. It's really not. And so this isn't a one and done type thing. It's going to take a lot of ongoing education. I'd really like to have, I'm big on definitions. That's why I put some in this FAQ document. I'd like to see a site that has definitions so people can understand, because we use a lot of terminology. If you don't know what cleared by arrest versus cleared exceptionally means, it doesn't mean anything to you, but it's really important to understand how that influences the numbers. So I'll let you piggyback off that.
I did these numbers, I matched them 100% to the state. So every number on this was 100% matched. Now, that's when I did them. Numbers are fluent, and we've made more arrests since that date. So some of the cleared numbers have changed because we made an arrest yesterday to a case in 2024. It goes back to that number. But for the amount of incidences on the day we finished this, this was 100% match to what the state showed for all of these categories.
And this for the 2024 data, correct?
2024.
Appreciate it.
And then they're fluent, because if a report comes in today for something that happened in December, December's number changes, but you have to remember they're always fluent.
I see. Thank you.
And we report to the state monthly, correct? So that's the other thing you'll have to be mindful of.
So just clarifying off of that, are the 2024 numbers that are here on this sheet, are those the same that are on the Highway Patrol dashboard?
They were at this time. Since that time, more reports have been made, potentially, that went back and changed those numbers. So that's why I know this is, trust me, I ask tons of questions. So just be mindful that, like she said, if something got solved or something got reported now and it happened back then, that can make a difference.
But the 2024 numbers for Columbia that are on the Highway Patrol dashboard, those are the NIBRS numbers?
Yes.
This is just a simple question. I know you said the stats, the 2024 stats will be available for the public today. Is there a certain time today they'll be released?
As soon as I walk out of here and go across the street, we're going to put them up, post them.
All right.
I am 100% certain that there's going to be questions after this. Be sure and email our PIO groups, and they will get you the answers they need. If they don't have them, they'll come to one of us and get them. I really appreciate you guys digging into this and being attentive to it, because it is a really important topic in the community, and we're very much committed to giving you the best possible data that we can and doing that consistently. So I will keep you guys updated on the progress of the dashboard as we get closer to that, and if you think of anything, just let us know. Thank you guys very much.